Hello, welcome to this edition of Museum Moments. My name is Ellie Gettinger. I'm the education director here, and we're sorry we were having some technical issues, but I think we're all together. So today I'm dressed just like I'm always dressed, or wait, I'm dressed as I envision a person at a feast in Persia in Shushan at the time of Achashverosh would be dressed. And we're going to be talking with Hazzan Jeremy Stein. Hazzan is another word for cantor, a Jewish clergy member. And we're going to be talking to Hazzan Jeremy Stein about Purim today. Hazzan Stein is the cantor at Congregation Beth Israel Ner Tamid. It's funny because it's my synagogue, so I should know it. And let's start out. Why costumes? Both of us have some kind of silly jackets on. Yours is less silly than mine. And what's the meaning of this? What are we doing here today?
First of all, thank you, Ellie, for having me. Purim is such a fun holiday, and the Megillat Esther, the book that we read on Purim, is one that's both full of humor, but specifically humor involving hidden identities and identities being revealed, and things being the Hebrew word is hafuch, meaning turned backwards or turned upside down. And so costumes are a way of reenacting the narrative of Purim, but also just as on Purim things get turned upside down, turned on their heads, the weak become the powerful become the weak. That which is celebrated becomes base, and that which is base becomes celebrated. Costumes are a way of reenacting that sense of hafuch, of both hiding identities and revealing, but also of making light of what would normally be serious.
So what is the central story of Purim? Because, many Jewish holidays have a story. This one in particular. Tell us about that kind of piece of Purim.
So in Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, the Jews are living in Persia during the time of the Babylonian exile, and they seem to be doing okay. One of their members, Mordechai, even has a place in the king's court, and he has his cousin or niece Esther hide her Jewish identity, and she is able to become the queen of Persia. And so right off the bat, we have this this hidden identity so she has, Esther in a sense is wearing a costume. She is pretending, at least pretending not to be who she is. And this becomes really important when the villain of the Megillah, whose name is Haman.
Go!
Everybody
we'll
at
play
home,
that out in a bit.
Everybody can join in at home. When Haman, the villain, is angry at Mordechai, who will not bow down to him, and there's a much more involved story behind that. He decides he's going to kill all of the Jews throughout the kingdom. And it is Esther has to decide, does she remain hidden? If the king doesn't know that she's Jewish, she might be saved. But does she keep her identity hidden, or does she tell the king who she really is, hoping that he will then save all of the Jews? So that, in a very condensed nutshell, is the story of Purim.
We're getting some nice jackets and booths from the peanut gallery out there. But that kind of so she steps up and saves the day.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this thing in reading the Megillah, the book of Esther, that anytime you hear the name of that villain, you say boo, that there is a family friendly, this is a very fun holiday. And yet at its core, the message of the holiday, and even with all of the trappings of costumes and fun and jubilation, is a hard message. It's a message about, ethnic hatred, and it's a message about baseless killing and having to fear for your life because of who you are. So how does those two pieces kind of jive together?
Well, I think that it actually is, in fact, part of that whole hafuch, that opposite business of Purim, is taking what would normally be a very grave, serious situation and making light of it. And there are, theories, in fact, that the book of Esther is, in fact, a parody in and of itself, that is sort of making light of what is normally a serious situation of Jews living in exile, dealing with both the benefits and dangers of assimilation, and dealing with baseless hatred and anti-Semitism and xenophobia, and turning those very serious, for this one day, or this one night and one day, turning these very serious and grave matters, making light of them, making them hafuch, making them opposite.
One of my favorite customs around Purim is the custom of the Purimspiel. And the reason I wanted a Hazzan to be my guest today and not a rabbi is because I feel like the Purimspiel often is the realm of the Hazzan in a congregation, at least in our congregation. This is your sweet spot here. Can you describe what a shpiel looks like? Because there are all sorts of variations. And then how did this evolve?
So a shpiel is like a play of sort. Or routine, and the Purimspiel is a way of retelling. We retell the when we read the Megillah, we are in effect retelling the story of Purim. But a shpiel is a way of doing it, and the reading itself is done in a very lighthearted fashion. There are there are funny melodies some people put in. Some people do different voices for different characters. The fact that we boo every time we say Haman.
Boo!
We don't usually do that in synagogue. We don't make a ruckus in synagogue. But the Megillah, in retelling the story in this very formal way, we are still adding levity to it. But the Purimspiel is a way of retelling it in an even more, often more silly, more comical way. And so a traditional shpiel might retell the story. You'll often see congregations will do a Purimspiel based on Wizard of Oz, or based on the music of Billy Joel, and that tells the story again in a humorous way.
Bringing those pop culture references, making it engaging and
But at its sense, really, what we're going for is being silly. Again, taking what would normally be a serious thing of retelling a passage of the Bible, we do it in a very silly way. And
it's not an American custom. This predates.
Oh, sure. I think even in the Talmud there are references to levity on Purim. And this of finding ways to retell the story, or even if it would be common in yeshivot, where people are studying Torah. You would write songs parodying your Rosh Yeshiva, your teacher, which normally you would never do that. But Purim makes that
permissible.
Was a rare opportunity where you could do things like that. So the Purimspiel, doing it to the theme of a movie or a rock star would certainly be modern, but the idea of retelling it in a humorous way is very old.
So this year we're in a little bit of a different universe. In fact, the last time I was in synagogue was on Purim in 2020. or 5780. That's the last time I was physically in synagogue. So, which I will also say boo to that too. So how are you planning, and how are others of your colleagues kind of trying to engage that silliness while we're in the Zoomiverse?
I'll be honest, it's hard. One thing we've noticed really from the beginning of virtual synagogue is that as much as we have to be cognizant of time and duration of service and program when they're in person, all the more so when it's on Zoom. It wasn't long after Zoom became the norm that the Yiddish speakers came up with the term "oisgezoomed," which means like out zoomed. You're zoomed out. You're zoomed out. And so we've had to adjust a lot of our services and programming based on just the understanding that forgetting the limitations of what you can do in a Zoom program or service, it's just there's only so much screen time that people can take, both at any given time and during any given week or month. So that has been a year-long adjustment. In terms of Purim, we are still committed to reciting the Ganze Megillah, the full Megillah, and we'll be doing that on Zoom. We will be, for people who don't have a full Ganze Megillah in them for Zoom, we totally understand, especially for children. We are doing a half hour beforehand. We're doing an abbreviated, I'm calling it a mini Megillah, where I pick, a few verses from each chapter to chant in Hebrew and in English. And while that's going on, we'll have a couple people kind of comically, dramatically acting out what's going on.
A little bit of a Zoom spiel.
A Zoom spiel, exactly. And we always have a Purim, a costume pageant, where we invite all the kids to come on the bima and show off their costume and say who they are. This year, we're going to have a masquerade. Get it? Masquerade, where everyone who's there in costume, there you go, will be able to show off their costume on Zoom. And again, that's an example of the mask. I mean, there's very little that's more serious these days than wearing a mask. And we're taking the opportunity on Purim to have a little levity with mask wearing and giving it a little silly twist.
Now, I know you are someone who takes costumes very seriously. And in generally, like, you've grown out your facial hair, you've shaved your beard, you've done lots of work to be like, so can you give us any hint as to what you're going to be this year? Or is that too much?
No, well, I never give away my costume, but I will say that I was not a big costume wearer growing up. I always did something as a kid, but it was never a big thing. But when I became a synagogue professional, I was like, you know what? I really ought to do it up. And it's something that I've grown to love. So someone actually did ask me at Minyan the other day. They said, this is the time of year when everybody makes bets on why, on your facial hair. Are you growing it out? Are you growing it out for something? Are you growing it out to shave us and surprise us? And then I said, you know what? It's a mask theme. So it really doesn't even matter what I'm wearing.
The real question is there going to be body paint and hair dye that are required? There was a note that generally Hazzan Stein's costumes require body paint and extensive face paint and mostly hair dye. I know I shared one picture of him as Obi-Wan Kenobi. There was extensive dye, but
yeah, well, and hair dye and makeup those are two things I never did as a kid. And when Amanda and I dressed up as mimes that one time, I got hooked. And it was anytime.
Now it's like all of the theatricality in you. This is the time of year it comes out.
No, I will say there will be no makeup and hair dye, not because of lack of revelry, but simply because the mask is my main costume. And
Got
so
it.
the mask will obscure any of that makeup. So my only hint is that, you know what? I can't even give a hint because that might out the rest of my family.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Thank you guys for joining us. Jeremy, I know you have a CD that just came out.
Yeah.
If you want to give it one quick plug and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. And actually there is a little bit of a Purim tie-in. I am recording a CD of original music that I've written for Havdalah. 4 of the 5 songs I wrote during quarantine. And it will be released at the end of the spring as and you can pre-order it, but it's a benefit for Jewish summer camps, which were hit very hard last summer. Most of them were closed. And so all of the music I've written for Havdalah is really written with a camp flair. So I don't know if you can I put it in the chat where they can, where people can get it? Sure.
Totally. So that'll be in our chat. Thank you so much for joining us. I have to thank our sponsor, Robin Cohen, for making this merry museum moment available, and all of the others. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about the hippie program. It is not a costume program, but it is a really important program that women have supported throughout the Milwaukee community. So join us again. And thank you, Jeremy, so much for coming.
My pleasure, Ellie. Thank you for having me.